Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another brand new, very special episode of Once Upon a Turnbuckle. And I'm pleased to say I've got a brand new guest to welcome to the show. Second half of my blockbuster double bill, which I crudely named these two episodes back to back. Welcome to the show. The other half, I was going to say the Pillman to Jordan's Austin, Vicious to your Delicious. Something I was going to make some kind of pun like that for tag team names, and it just completely went off the top of my head. Toby St, welcome to the show, mate. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Chris. Hey, I'll take the Brian Pillman comparison. That's no problem with me. I've always said, Jordan, he's the rock, he's the good looks, and I'm just there just to mess around and do stupid stuff all the time. So that's me. I'm happy to claim that.
At least I haven't offended you from the off.
Not at all.
Marvelous. That's all right then. I did mention to Jordan, about the very clear comparison of the influence that I had in my head when I first saw you two, and it's like very, very Hollywood blondes. And it's not just the long hair for you. I think I just get the attitude of Pillman from you as well. From what I've said. So yeah, it's always good.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it any day of the week. Me and Jordan joke about it all the time. He is such a great technical wrestler, and he knows the holds inside and out. And I like to jump off stuff and punch people really hard. So other than the jackets, we take a few things from the Hollywood blondes, and I'm quite happy to say that to anybody.
Good, there you go. That's off on a good start then. Toby, this is great to have you here, mate. And I know we joked about it. I kind of missed you on the first loop, and but the thing is, though, it's not only given us more to talk about, but it means that I get to. One thing I've missed doing on here is when someone's on here for the first time is really delving into your journey with wrestling, your relationship with wrestling, and it's obviously it hasn't. I gather not just started with when you got in the ring. I'm guessing wrestling was part of your life before that.
Oh yeah.
So we talk about from the off, wind it right back to the beginning. What was your first memories of wrestling? When did you realize it was a thing? When did you discover it?
So my first memories are in the really, really early 2000s. I think 2001 maybe, where my family were lucky enough to get Sky at the time. Yep. And the story my mum tells is that I was just flicking through channels on the remote, not really watching anything, just doing it for the sake of doing it. And then all of a sudden came across the WWE and just sort of stopped and was fixated on it. And pretty much since then, so I was probably, I'm not going to reveal my age, I was young. And and I think it just stuck with me ever since then. And it's been a lifelong obsession. I think like everybody, I had a couple years break maybe when I thought I was cool and I didn't like wrestling anymore, but that never lasts. So come back to it. And then, I've loved it forever. And it took me longer than looking back on it now, longer than I would have liked to have given it a try myself. But I'm glad I did in the end.
There you go. And we're glad you did in the end, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. So, so we're talking early 2000s. What strikes me the difference, I mean, I'll give my age away a little bit. I was 7 years old when I discovered it in 1991. Mm-hmm. So probably quite a different time than when you got into it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have had... Was WCW still around at that point, or is this when WWE was basically it?
I mean, I had no knowledge of WCW when I started watching. And I don't know if that's because it would have been just after they had bought them and they'd folded, but it would have been around that time. So I really didn't know anything about WCW. It all been swept away by that point.
Yeah, that's around the time that I kind of, not just because of that, but I stopped watching it around 2001, 2002. Again, like you said, we all reach a certain age where we're just a bit cool.
Yeah, exactly.
So wrestling's what we grew up with. It's kids stuff, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's very, very different. Quite a different world, I would say, than what I grew up with in the 90s, when you had so much to choose from. I mean, over here, it was WWF, WWE. WCW was in a minor part on ITV at the time on Saturday afternoons, but not very much. Who were those early stars that really grabbed you? Was there anyone there that was your kind of boyhood hero?
Well, I think when I started watching in sort of 2001, 2002, I don't think I was cognizant enough to be like a fan of anything specifically. So I just sort of watched it just because I was like, oh, this is amazing. And it wasn't until a few years later that I started gravitating towards Shawn Michaels. That was my first really big, this is my guy. I have to watch him all the time. I have to root for him every time. I had the poster in my wall. I had all that stuff. Shawn Michaels for me, for the longest time, was the guy. And it used to break my heart whenever he'd lose a match, and I'd get really upset about it, especially at WrestleMania. I would watch WrestleMania with my friends at a younger age and be devastated when he would lose. And it really sticks in my memory of just heartbreak at that period of my life.
Oh, well, there you go. What better guy to do it? I'm with you there. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels were my two, my big heroes. I think even when Shawn in the early to mid 90s was a heel.
Oh yeah,
he was my favorite heel. You have one of those, don't you? Even though you don't like cheering for them, they're the one that you really do like to boo. He was that, and then obviously WrestleMania 12 for me was ideal. In a way, a real conflict kind of match.
Oh yeah,
one of the greatest ones that I can remember. So, good choice there. Did you go back then once you saw Shawn Michaels when he was then? Did you go back and have to learn about him and watch all of his old stuff?
Oh, of course. I mean, as I've gotten older and gotten to be more of a fan of wrestling, I have pivoted way back to watching wrestling from the late 70s up into the early 90s. Nowadays, that's my period of wrestling. That's the wrestling I always put on. If I want to watch wrestling at home, I'm putting on an episode of Mid-South from 1984. So I've gone back and I've watched everything, all of Shawn Michaels' early stuff in Texas, all the way up to his debut of the Rockers and those early matches with the Brainbusters and the people like that, just to get a great view of it. And that made me an even bigger fan because he had been so amazing all the way up until that point when I was introduced to him after he came back in 2002. And then he carried it on long after that. So going back and being able to watch it gave me an even greater appreciation for him. I just think it's brilliant.
I think the great thing about him in the early 2000s when he did that comeback is because I'm going back on my own sort of journey again, trying to fill in all the gaps of the years that I missed. So I've been watching 2002 recently, and I've got to SummerSlam 2002 when he came back for that one match, and just to consider that one match turned into, I don't know how much longer he was doing it, a good sort of, I don't know, 8 years or so probably beyond.
Yeah, well, 2010 or 2011 was his WrestleMania.
Yeah, so he got a good
last match.
9 years when he wasn't even meant to do more than one match. I mean, just
yeah.
Whether he was the same, I think what I've seen of him, he's still entertaining. He wasn't moving quite like he used to. He's
100%. It's there's something really authentic about the way he just moves around in the ring. It's very fluid and very real, and the expressions on his face. Not a lot of other people, I think, can pull that off, and I think that's what makes him so unique. Is that he's just so good at drawing emotion out of the crowd that people just are fixed on him all the time, and it really builds that connection. I think that's what makes him special.
Either way, he's one of those that I think he doesn't have to change his character much to be a heel or a face. He is one of those that is just kind of just has to be in the middle. Thinking back to, I didn't watch the match, but I've heard a lot about it when he was up against Hulk Hogan, that SummerSlam where he just completely oversold everything. He was meant to be the heel. He didn't really have to do a lot. He just had to super kick Hogan, and all of a sudden he's the bad guy anyway.
Well, of course. And if you listen to the interviews and stories and podcasts of guys who were around Shawn Michaels in the 90s and maybe even a bit later, they'll tell you, it wasn't a gimmick. That was just who he was. He just wasn't a very nice guy, but he was a very talented guy, so he could get away with it. And then I think when he did come back in 2002, that's when he had his whatever it is, born again, Christian awakening, and then that reflects his personality going forward. Then, but there's always that little bit in the background. I don't think you ever fully get away from who you are previously.
No, he had that cheekiness still to him, didn't he? Really?
Oh yeah.
So before I move on, then, favorite Shawn Michaels match, is that a bit harsh?
Oh, I mean, there's so many. Like, obviously, the one that most people think of straight away is the WrestleManias with the Undertaker at 25 and 26. They are so good. But I think the one that sticks out in my mind, because I remember watching it live, was his Iron Man match with John Cena on Raw for the WWE Championship. That was, yeah, I'd never seen an Iron match before because I hadn't at that point gone back to watch, Brett and Shawn have theirs earlier in years and years and whatever other matches. So that whole concept was new to me. So I was like, wow, this is going to be, I don't know anything about what this is going to be. And it turned out to be one of the best matches I've ever seen just because of you've got to do so much to fill an hour. You've got to tell so many stories in that time period to keep it interesting. And both those guys did such a great job.
I haven't seen that one, actually.
Oh, there's one for your list.
Yeah, I need to add that to it. I did miss a lot of his later run. I am like an old man when it comes to wrestling. I have my era, and I don't really like to tread outside of that because it kind of makes me a little bit uncomfortable, which is a bit. So that goes beyond. I haven't gone back and watched much of it, but I will hunt that one out.
That's a good one to find.
It's funny. The Iron Man match he had with Brett, I think, got panned by a lot of fans at the time because they had their slow points where they were really into the technical kind of thing. There was a lot of rest holds there to eke the time out. But I think back then that is what you did. Is when I saw the later Iron Man matches where it was ending like 5 decisions apiece or something.
Well, I think what people don't realize is obviously an hour is a long time. And as someone who's been in matches that, very occasionally go longer than half an hour, that's a really long time. And I think maybe it was more obvious in that match, but I think in every Iron Man match, there are slow periods. You just do it differently so that it's not so obvious, And then because you have those slow periods, when the action picks up and goes faster and is more exciting, it looks even faster and even more exciting because you have that slow period. So I think the guys still do it. You just got to find a creative way to do it.
Absolutely, good way of putting it. Now, let's go back to yourself because we're going to talk about you.
Sure.
So as a fan, then when did it kind of come a point that we all used to dream about doing it? I did it as well. It's all I wanted to do when I was a kid. What was it then that made you decide, actually, no, I am going to do this? And then what sort of path did that take?
Well, I think I went through a lot of phases of, I'm going to try this. I remember looking online for training schools when I was, a teenager at that point and sort of finding stuff and being like, oh, but it's too far away. I don't know how I would get there. At that point, obviously, I couldn't get myself there. So it's like, oh, I'd have to ask my mum to take me there. And I don't really want to do that. So I just kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off until I was old enough to be able to do it myself. And then I was like, okay, I found a place. I can give it a try. And at the time, I thought I'll give it a try just to say that I've done it because I've always said I was going to try it. So I'll just try it, say that I've done it, and then I've done it. And I'm happy to tell the story about the first session because it's at a training school that doesn't exist anymore. It was the DWA in Exeter, which was run by UK Dominator at the time, originally founded by Joe Redmond.
Okay. Yeah.
And the very first session I was there, I turned up. At the time, it was supposed to start or a little bit earlier, and there was no one there. So I just waited around, and eventually one guy showed up, and I said, are you here for the wrestling? And he's like, oh, yeah, but nobody's coming. And I was like, oh, okay, why? But at the time, it was at the beginning of September, right before my birthday. So the holiday camp season had just finished. And the guys who would usually be at the training school had just finished a long camp season, so had all decided, we're not going to training, we need a break. Right. So it was just me, this one guy, and then maybe, I think about 4 others turned up eventually. Right. And someone had a key, opened the boxing gym, the falling apart boxing gym in Exeter. And it was just one of the other trainees just sort of took charge of the session, and we learned very basic, how to lock up, how to put a wrist lock on, and that was about it, really. But even just doing that was enough for me to be like, oh, I'm going back next week. This is the best thing ever. Because just doing the action, I think, was enough to, I don't know, spark something in my brain of, oh, I like it. So I had to keep going back. That was it.
That's cool. That's a real kind of made me think of like Rocky Balboa type story with these rundown gyms, and that's where you
It was
start.
a run-down boxing gym. It was really bad. Really, I think it's condemned now, if I remember right. But yeah, it was rough at the time.
But tell you what you needed to know. So I was going to ask then is, obviously it's probably baby steps, or it doesn't seem like at the time when you start off, you're learning some quite basic stuff. Did you, during that, was there any point that you questioned whether you were going to stick with it to get somewhere with it, or did at any point did you think, actually, no, this isn't for me? I think you just
Oh,
had to.
absolutely. I started at the DWA in September of that year. I think it was, I can't even remember the year now, but I started in the September, and I trained up until November, towards the end of November, and I tore my rotator cuff in my right shoulder because in the lead up to going to wrestling training, I thought in my mind, I have to go to the gym. I have to get big and get in shape before I start wrestling training because,
Yeah.
I want to be a wrestler and that's what wrestlers do. So I was going like mad in the gym at the time, and I was still doing that whilst then doing training. And yeah, just completely tore my rotator cuff, couldn't do anything. So my initial bout of wrestling lasted for 3 months. And then, there you go. It was 2019 because I took that 3 months off. And as I was getting ready to start up again, the following year, that's when COVID hit. So that was the end of the road for me. And I thought at that point, oh, well, it was nice while it lasted.
Yeah.
Shame it had to stop now, but that's it. Get back to my normal life now. And that was it.
That was the universe probably telling you, look, this isn't going to happen.
Yeah, pretty much.
It could have been, but you didn't listen. So I launched this podcast actually in the thick of lockdown back in 2020.
Yeah.
I was talking to quite a few guys then about how they were keeping going, keeping motivated, and how were they keeping themselves out there? Because obviously you still need to, you can't just sit there and then expect, well, once this lifts, I'm going to go straight back, from being dry almost. So what were you doing during that lockdown to get yourself ready for when it opened up and you could actually finally get back to it?
Well, from trying to get myself in shape before starting wrestling training, that sort of stuck with me, and I wanted to keep doing that. So throughout the start of lockdown to sort of the first lifts, whenever that was, I was still training pretty regularly, but just at home. So I was keeping myself in shape and doing all the things I was doing anyway and eating right. So I never lost that part of it. It was just I needed to find another way to do the wrestling part of it.
Sure.
So I was always ready. And it wasn't until I spoke to a couple of the guys who I'd met from training at the DWA, who most of them, unfortunately, don't wrestle anymore. But they said, oh, we're going to go down to this training school in Plymouth and try it out there because they're going to let, I think at the time it was like the rule of 6. So they would let 6 people in at a time to train.
Yeah.
And we could do it there. So at that point, probably, I think it was the summer of 2020, right in the middle, when they lifted the restrictions a little bit, that was the back in. So just from keeping myself in shape and keeping myself in the loop, I was able to sort of slide back in and pick it up from there.
Cool. What was the early Toby St. John's like in the ring? What was your kind of, did you have a persona back then, or?
Well, my first professional wrestling name was Toby Valentine. There you go. And that was just handed to me because there was a period of time where, funnily enough, Jordan messaged me and said, I'm speaking to some guy who wants to book me for a wrestling show. He's asked if I can bring a couple other people and I'll put your name forward. And I said, oh, thank you very much. That'd be great. And then he said, what's your name? And I said, I don't have one. So it was just sort of discussed off screen somewhere, unbeknownst to me. And they said, well, you like old school wrestling. You like the Von Erichs. You like, I don't know, Wahoo McDaniel. You like Greg Valentine. So you are Toby Valentine. Because they initially wanted to call me Toby Von Erich, but I didn't think we could get away with that. So Toby Valentine is what stuck.
That's because I wouldn't have thought that came from the old, because I thought there could be a gimmick in there somewhere. Well, that could have been your name.
No.
I didn't realize till fairly recently it wasn't. So yeah, Von Erich would have been quite difficult to dance away from that one.
Bit on the nose, that one.
Yeah. You couldn't even really say you were some long lost relative
No, that never works out well for any of those guys.
It never does it. No,
No.
no. So so you that's with is that where you first started working with Jordan? You know, obviously we'll bring it further up to date in a bit, but obviously you go way back to then.
I go way back with Jordan. I when I first started, he had already been training for maybe a year, I want to say, or maybe not even that long, but he was already, he's Jordan. He was already good. He'd already been, putting the work in and everything. So I didn't really meet him and talk to him until I'd been training for a little while. But, after a while, we just became mates pretty quickly. I would really like to be able to remember when that was or how it happened, but I have no memory of it whatsoever. It's just like one day, it's just we're really good friends now. So that's brilliant. So yeah, and we started out going to some really smaller, lower level shows together just to try and get some matches under our belt. And more often than not, we would wrestle each other. That's how we started. We started because, it was Jordan is very smarmy. So you're going to put him in there with me, who's very,
white baby face kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that. Yeah. And so they would just put us together a lot of the time, and we would have matches, and we wrestled each other more times without looking at my books, more times than I could ever remember. So that's how we got started. And then one day it was just, well, let's try being a team and see how that goes.
Do you find do you feel you learned more about each other in the ring by being against each other, and then sort of naturally that added to your chemistry when you came to being a team?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I think me and George have a really similar mindset for wrestling. We have similar influences. We like a lot of the same old school style, old school mentality of wrestling. So we used to put that into our matches. It would come out in our matches against each other. So then when we became a team, it was, we both, love the Hollywood Blondes. We both love the Midnight Express, the Heavenly Bodies. We can take this old school, and who better to make it a team than two guys who love it and study it as much as we do and appreciate it as much as we do. And what's old is new again. And that was what we decided.
And what's great for me is old school. I'm the 80s and 90s, really. That's my era. And it's so good now to see that there is a team like yourselves who you can look at them and you can look at what you do in the ring, and it's like, there's got to be some old school influence there somewhere, for that to be really, really evident. Because I said this to Jordan as well. It's the one thing I hated about wrestling for a time is that the tag team scene just became nothing. They were just throwing people together. What I loved is I grew up with the teams that you've just talked about, Midnight Express, Fabulous Freebirds, but the more technical teams were my teams. Like the Steiners were my favorite team of all time back in the NWA days.
Yeah.
So when you decided, I mean, I might be zipping forward a little bit too much here. So, through those early days now, when was it that your career, do you feel like, turned that corner where you were where you were in those early days, and all of a sudden something clicks and you're like, actually, no, something fits now, and I'm going probably trajectory wise, you were on the up. What was there a moment that you sort of felt that happened?
I think there's a couple. I think when we started out, we just started out as we just want a team because we think it will help us get more opportunities. Maybe, people will be looking more for tag teams than they will for just a couple of wrestlers. So we thought, okay, we'll just try it. And I think for a while, we just tried to just do whatever we thought the people in charge wanted us to do, depending on where we were working.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we did a show for New Wave Wrestling, actually, on one of their earliest shows. And we had a tag team match. And that was our first tag team match under the name, the Blockbusters, because previously to that, for a very short period of time, we were the Pretty Sexy Playboys. Very short-lived, didn't last very long. I loved it, personally. I thought it was amazing. I had so much fun doing it. But we, got given advice. It might sound a bit too close to Pretty Deadly. There's other stuff you guys can do. Yeah. I'm not sure how much I agree with that, but it's what we got told at the time. So they said, come up with a new name, give us something different, have a match here and see what you can do. So Jordan, the mastermind that he is, texted me one day and said, well, you do a spine buster and I do a blockbuster. So we can either be the spine busters or we can be the blockbusters. You pick. And I, thought, well, of the two, I like blockbusters better. There's a lot more puns we can make out of the blockbusters. So we'll go with that. And we did that show and we did the match, got back, and we got some advice from Danny Luna, who's now in TNA and Chaos regular. And she said that she recognized that we're good at what we do. We're not great at doing what we think everyone else wants us to do.
Okay. Yeah.
Because sometimes I think we sort of go, this is the show we're working on, so we have to do what they're expecting on this show. And that's not what we're good at. What we're good at is being us and being old school and bringing that kind of mentality to our matches. So I think when she told us that and we thought about it more, we really leaned into it and just started not compromising as much as we would have done before and just being who we wanted to be as a team. And that really helped us confidence-wise, and then that carried us through after that. Really cool. And then when we went to America the very first time, that's when it really picked up for us.
And that's where I wanted to go next. So it's almost like you read my notes. I had to ask there was a period of time when I did step away from the wrestling scene a little bit. I was doing so much podcasting here, there, and everywhere that I had to kind of silence my feed a little bit on stuff that I was no longer involved in. But when I came back, and then I saw, Jordan, I followed Jordan anyway, and then when I saw that, because I follow Rhiannon as well from back in the day, and then when I found you were going to America, not only that, but you were going to train at Prichard Wrestling Academy. I was like, is that is that the one that I've heard about? And it was. I mean, I got to ask, your experience of firstly getting that opportunity, and then what that first trip out there held for you, and what did you learn from that?
Man, we had thought about it beforehand, back when we were training at our old place. And, somebody brought it up, does anybody fancy going out to America to learn? And at the time, we were really early on in our training, so it's like, it's probably not for us, we'll leave it. And then, again, my memory's terrible. I really wish I had notes of this stuff. But it came up again at some point. Maybe we should think about doing this. And there were initially a bigger group, and it sort of over time whittled down until it was just me, Jordan, Rhiannon, and Ruby who decided we were going to go out. We didn't know what to expect. Me and Jordan, of course, knew who Dr. Tom Prichard was, just because he's, one of the best tag team wrestlers of all time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Of all time. But we didn't know what to expect. We just thought we'd go, we'd learn as much as we can and see what happens. And learning from someone like Dr. Tom, who has taught everybody, he taught The Rock, he taught Kurt Angle, he taught Mark Henry, he taught the Hardys, he taught Edge, he taught, the list goes on and on forever, pretty much. Yeah, who's who. Yeah. And just getting his insight about wrestling, not just from the in-ring perspective, but how to carry yourself and how to, how to promote yourself and how to keep your head level the whole way through. That's stuff that's so invaluable to me now that I wish I knew from the jump, because it would have made things easier and just it would have made my mindset so much better on it, just to keep things in perspective like you should. But that first trip, that first 3 months, we trained in the worst heat and humidity and just disgusting conditions in this tin shed in La Follette, Tennessee, and sweated buckets and gallons of sweat for those 3 months, every single day for 4 hours a day. And I wouldn't change a single thing about it, because it was the best experience of my life. And I can't begin to thank Dr. Tom enough for doing what he did for us, because I think it made us head and shoulders above what we ever would have been if we didn't go. And I credit Doc with a lot, and that horrible heat with a lot too.
But you got through it. And to be fair, one day, 20, 30 years down the line, when you decide you're going to write your work, you will have those experiences that these old school guys started off with. You've been given that. And this is one thing that I think, there's some stars out there probably that walk into too much without properly grafting. But you guys, you can at least say you've had those experiences out there with someone like him. I mean, Dr. Tom, my earliest memories of him was the Heavenly Bodies. It's one of those teams. As I've got older, again, I keep saying this, the heels are something I really, really do not relate to, but I appreciate a lot more.
Yeah.
I hated the Heavenly Bodies back then because they were smarmy. They were always up against my heroes. Yeah, why would I want them to win? He was a quality old school character wrestler just by being himself, but you had this air about him that you didn't want to see him win.
Yeah,
which I think is a talent. Did you feel that you were able to take some of that into what you guys were doing in the ring while you were out there, or that you brought back with you?
Oh, 100%. 100%. There were so many times when we were out there where it would be sort of the break in between drills where it'd be like, okay, everybody go get a drink. And Doc would sit on the edge of the ring, just talk and just tell stories. And me and Jordan would just never stop asking him questions about everything, anything and everything. And he used to say, or he does still say, that, he himself was never the biggest guy, never the strongest guy, never the most in shape guy, the prettiest guy, but he worked harder than everybody else. And he made his minutes count every single time. Yeah. And not only that, but he made every guy in the ring that he was in the ring with look as good as they could. Yeah. And it was that got him noticed and got him recognized and got him opportunities. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that me and Jordan really cling on to, is that, we wrestle guys all the time who can do these amazing, acrobatics and flips and athletic stuff that we can't do. Jordan will tell you he doesn't like doing a dive. He can't, he doesn't want to leave his feet half the time. And, we wrestle guys who are, 6'6" and 300 pounds and really big. But every single time we wrestle, we are putting as much effort in as we possibly can and trying our best to help the guys we're in there with look as good as they can so that everybody gets lifted up. Yeah. And that's something that we learned from Dr. Tom. And I think that's something that will keep with us for the rest of our careers.
And that is exactly what made these, particularly the heels, so great. Is you're not out there to prove you're the best, at being bad or whatever. You're out there to make the good guys look good. And I think that is part of the art, which is really overlooked. Even today, I think not enough credit goes to the guys that used to do that. Not a massive Ric Flair fan, I've got to say,
Ooh, controversial.
I know, on this kind of show to say that, but I've never been a massive fan of his in-ring work, but his character work makes up for it for me. And the fact that he's in there with guys who, he makes them look a million times better than they probably are. Bret Hart used to do that for me. Anyone can say anything they want against him. It's like he never had a bad match, I don't feel. And he was in there with some pretty shoddy guys at times, and he made them look good. So let's talk about the bit in the middle here. So you had your first trip out in America, then when you came back over here, then you pick up your career over here. In between, then your second trip out there, what was that bit in between like when you were back over here? So, have anything changed, or did you just literally just keep the momentum going?
I think because when we did our first trip to America, we were lucky enough to get a few opportunities on shows out there and meet some really good guys and make some contacts and do a bit. And we got feedback all the time from Dr. Tom about our stuff. What can we be doing better? How do we present ourselves better? So when we came back over to here, to the United Kingdom, we decided to invest in ourselves more. And that's when we decided to get, our matching white boots and our jackets and more sets of gear and, get better pictures for Instagram and Titantrons and all these things. And that time period for us was just about making our overall package better, just because at the time, we're pretty decent in the ring. That's fine. We're comfortable with that side, but we need to be a presentable team that people would want to see. So, and that's when both Jordan and myself started on our, getting in shape, more in shape journey. Jordan especially, came back. We came back from that first tour of America. We indulged in the food a lot. You got to. That's the whole point. But we indulged.
Really
Oh yeah. So when we got back, it was the mission: get in better shape, make ourselves look better, and then just work our socks off for as long as we can to get as much opportunity as we can. So that period of time, training with Eddie Ryan at the Lions Den to, whatever anybody says about Eddie as a coach, he will make you as in shape for the ring as he possibly can, and he will make sure that everything you do is perfect. He really drills that into you. So we spent a lot of time training, a lot of time in the gym, and a lot of time focusing on our overall package to go forward.
And it's paid off. I mean, let's before we jump to where you are now, because dripping in gold doesn't really seem, doesn't really cover it. I mean, I don't think I've spoken to two guys who have been so hidden behind championships before. So when you then went back, there's a couple of things I did want to point out. If my records are correct, a couple of things that I'm interested in hearing more about when you went back out. I assume this is your second trip. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it is.
You got a stint, albeit it was 2 weeks, as the OVW Tag Team Champions.
Right? Yes, we did.
Yeah. So anyone in the know will immediately know Ohio Valley Wrestling has quite a lot of credence. Because of its history and the kind of people that have, some of the names that have gone through. So your names as the Blockbusters are there on the history sheets as OVW Tag Team Champions. Fair enough, a few years before, but along the likes of CM Punk, The Miz, Brock Lesnar and Shelton Benjamin were OVW Tag Team Champions before they made it to WWE. How does that feel? Again, knowing that your names are there against those titles.
Yeah, it's very special for us.
And how did that happen as well? Just talk me through kind of that whole
Good question. It's very special for us. We knew a guy who wrestled for Ohio Valley Wrestling, reached out to him, hey bud, do you know how or who we get in touch with about possibly going there if there's an opportunity? He set us up with one of the people in charge at OVW who Jordan messaged, and they gave us a shot, let us come do their not their live show, but their pre-taped show, which is called Overdrive, which airs on a Tuesday night over in the States. Do a match on there, see how you do, whatever. And me and Jordan did a tag match. Rhiannon and Ruby both had matches at the time. Carl Parker was there with us, Sex Cowboy. He had a match there, and we all got really positive feedback about our stuff, and we got asked to come back again. And we did, and we kept going back. We did about 2 months, give or take, there, where we went back and went back and went back. And it just so happened that one week we were told that there was going to be a tag team championship match, but one of the guys on the team that was going to challenge for the belts was injured. He couldn't compete. So our names got brought up. Here's a tag team. They've been wrestling for us for a few weeks. Just put them in the match and see how they do. And that is the one and only reason why we were in a match for the Ohio Valley Wrestling Tag Team Championships. And thankfully for us, we took advantage of that opportunity.
Absolutely. So that is really right place, right time,
Big time. Big time.
That's amazing. And looking at some of the guys that you've been able to work with out there, Kerry Morton is a name I'll throw up as well.
Yeah.
So for those who may not be in the know, he's the son of legendary Ricky Morton. Again, someone with a pedigree then from an absolute tag team legend. I haven't seen Kerry in action, I must admit. Is he sort of, acorn doesn't fall far?
Absolutely. Yeah. if you ever get the opportunity to talk to Kerry, I'd say do it. He is just full of charisma. In some circles, he's known as the Riz God, Kerry Morton, and for good reason. We've only had one match against Kerry. We had a match against him and the Thrillbilly Silas Mason for KFW in Sevierville, Tennessee. But Kerry's amazing, and his dad is never far behind him. We've met Ricky on a few different occasions, and he's as much of a character as you want him to be. So that is definitely passed down to his son, and they're also just really great people. Kerry helped me and Jordan a lot. He spoke up on our behalf to a lot of people and tried to get us opportunities, and we thank him a lot for that. And Kerry's a great guy.
That's brilliant. And someone like that who it's in his blood naturally. He would have been brought up with it, and the fact that his dad's still doing it. I think last time I was back watching NWA Power a couple of years ago, and the Rock and Roll Express had another run with the belts. I was like,
"Yep,
what is it? 2020 odd, or is it?"
Yes, it is. And Ricky Morton's out there throwing Canadian destroyers out in matches. That's the world we live in.
Yeah, quite. No. And this one blew my mind. It really did. And I do remember seeing a post fly across my feed about this at the time, I think. You had a match against the Andersons. In the Andersons, again, Brock Anderson, who is Arn Anderson's son.
Yep.
And C.W. Anderson, who, I've known about C.W. Anderson for years. He was in magazines when I was growing up, when I used to do the indie read-ups. But Double A himself was at ringside.
Yes, he was.
So you referred to, potential name that you had was the Spinebusters. Could you imagine being out there as the Spinebusters with him on the floor?
I don't think we could have done that. I think we would have had. I think we would have to change it on the fly because I couldn't, in good conscience, go out there against the Andersons being called the Spinebusters. That's no.
But did that add another layer of pressure knowing that you were that close? Not only like with him watching, but he's got a presence in your match.
Oh yeah.
How did that go? Firstly,
where we wrestled for the company AML Wrestling on our first time around, the year prior, and we wrestled CW then as well. But at that time, he was tagging with George South, who is an absolute legend of the Carolinas and just the territories in general from the 80s. And that tag match against CW and George is still today my favorite match of my career so far. Wow. I talk about it until the cows come home. But when AML contacted us the second time around and said, "Do you want to come in for a match?" Obviously, the answer was yes immediately. But when he told us it was against the Andersons, I don't really want to repeat what I said at the time when I got the message. But it was pretty exciting. But it was also really nerve-wracking because it's the Andersons. CW is one of my favorite human beings on the planet. He is so generous with his knowledge and with his time, and he's complimentary and he gives great feedback. He's a great guy. We hadn't met Brock at the time, but we'd heard great things about him. And just knowing that we were going to be wrestling them with Arn Anderson on the outside, I have never been more nervous and more excited for a match at the same time ever. Still now, that was as nerve-wracking as it gets. But the match itself was great. AML runs such great shows in North Carolina. They're one of the best companies going. We love working for them. And that match was everything we wanted it to be. We got in there. If Arn Anderson had rolled in the ring and given me a spine buster, that would have been the only thing to push it over the top. But
I was going to ask, was there a chance that was going to happen? And
I don't think so. I think his spine bustering days may be behind him, which is a real shame because I would have blown up for him in a heartbeat. But no, even without that, and just getting to talk to Arn after the match.
Yeah.
Where he was, again, complimentary of me and Jordan. That's a guy who I specifically go back to watch his matches. Yeah. When he's WCW television champion and he wrestled young William Regal, in WCW, or, his matches, him and Tully as the Brainbusters, their matches. anything with Arn Anderson, I've studied and studied and studied, and yeah, he's been such a big influence on me personally as a wrestler in the ring. So talking to him and having him there at ringside is, yeah, one of the best memories that I'll have for the rest of my life.
How old are you? I know you didn't want to let on at the beginning, but
I'm in my 20s.
You're younger than me, so a lot younger than me. If you had just said way back when you started, if you would talk to yourself, when you were just starting training, that within these amount of years, 5 years or whatever it's been, you would have been able to learn from, in person, learn from guys like this, would you have believed it?
No, absolutely not. No. Like I said, when I first wanted to try it, I just wanted to say that I did.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to do it for anything. I didn't expect to ever step foot in a ring in front of a crowd. So from going from there to sharing a locker room with Arn Anderson, yeah, there's no way I would have ever predicted that, and I don't think I would have believed anyone who would have told me it either.
That's very good. Just think, if you would have taken that Spinebuster, one person who I think it takes the Spinebuster better than anyone was Shawn Michaels.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The first match I ever saw, people are probably sick to death of me mentioning it, was the 10-team match at Survivor Series 88.
Yep.
First tape I ever had. And in that match, that is when I saw my first Spinebuster, and Shawn Michaels took it, and I thought he'd killed him. Because I was like, no way he's getting up from that, surely. What the hell's he just done to him?
Perfect. And I'd have done him proud as well if Arn had rolled into the ring that day.
He would have. So, where I was going to go then from that. So you learn what you have, and you've been in the ring with, you've been around the people that you have already. Where can you go from here? Because let's just kind of realize where you are right now. Where are we? March 2025, very, very, beginning of the year. You have got 4 sets of tag team titles around you at the moment. One of those belongs overseas.
Yes.
Or it's from overseas. It doesn't belong overseas. It belongs here with you. You know what I mean?
Yes, it does.
If you could sit here right now and kind of think, from everything that you've experienced already, what is there left? Obviously, you've got a lot of years left ahead of you. What is it that you would like to achieve that's left on your kind of bucket list?
There's more places to go. We've been to America. We've toured pretty much the United Kingdom as a whole. We've been to Ireland, wrestled on the island of Guernsey. But there's a lot more of the world to do. We've talked about, me and Jordan talked about going to Japan and trying our hand out there, seeing how we get on. We've talked about Canada. We've talked about Mexico. We've been in talks with promotions in Europe. So there's so much more to do, so many more championships to win, obviously. But like you said, we have also got our NWA JCP World Tag Team Championships. And we fully intend to go back out to the United States and keep on defending those belts and keeping them forever. But that's just a work in progress right now. We're working really hard to get ourselves back out to the States, hopefully for a longer period of time than we have done previously. And hopefully then that will open some doors for us possibly to work with maybe some bigger places in the US. And really try and make a go of making our careers as big as we can.
Yeah, that's very cool. And the spotlight is very much, I feel, nowadays. It's almost going back to what it was like when I was mid to late 90s, when I was really, really into it. Spotlight is on the independent scene. There is almost like there is no hierarchy. Obviously there is a hierarchy because we know where certain people want to go. But there is such a breadth of places and promotions that you can go to. There's no shortage of opportunities out there, particularly out in America. So you could see back out there. But,
there's a lot more states we got to cross off our list. We've crossed off a good amount, but there's way more to do. So we got to try that too.
There you go. Yeah, you got to take those belts back and then come back with them again.
Absolutely.
So talk about some of the things that you are doing at the moment, some of the promotions that you are obviously representing in the tag team scene. That's got to be a hell of a how long have you and Jordan been tagging now?
We were trying to work this out the other day because, like Jordan, my memory isn't great and his isn't either. But
You
we
can't write the
think
diary.
exactly. We think we've been teaming now for, if not just over, about 2 years at this point.
Yes.
I had my first match in August of 2021. So I'm coming up to 4 years.
Yes.
This August coming. Jordan started a little bit before me, but not by much. And then we've been teaming for about 2. So in that time period, we've accomplished a lot more than we thought we were going to.
Yeah.
I think. And being given the responsibility of holding championships for multiple promotions now is a real privilege. Something that we're very grateful to be able to do. But also, it's our hard work. That's
Absolutely
what we've put into it, and that's what getting that back is just vindication for that hard work.
Yeah. I've noticed that at least a couple of different places that you go, you can get different reactions. You are a real quality heel team. The fans don't like you and they're very vocal about it, which is fantastic. I was there at Chaos and I just loved, I think one of the things that I absolutely loved was how the crowd was really quite almost almost on the brink of being venomous to the people they really can't stand. And you guys were on that side. But then you also get the crowds cheering for you. I think was it New Wave recently where you were there for when James Ellis won the heavyweight title.
Oh yeah, we had to come back and help our boy Jimmy.
Yeah, the reception you got there it's like night and day. So again, anything different that you do there that has encouraged that, or is that just different crowds?
I think with New Wave, we've had a pretty long absence from New Wave. We left. We had our last match there early in 2024 before our second USA tour. So it'd been a long time since we've been in a New Wave ring, and they didn't like us very much before we left. We weren't their favorite people before we left, but with everything that James Ellis has been doing there and that Chris Bronson's been doing there, really changing people's minds, that I think when we came back, people were, just happy to see us and happy to see us be there for James when he was about to get his head caved in by Josh Holly. So I think that's why the reception was warmer than it was for those Muppets at Chaos who don't appreciate a great tag team like us, especially when we come out with the beautiful Lady Luck too. Just maybe just a bit sore about it. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, that's a touch that I absolutely love as well. You don't get the managers and valets aren't really as big a thing now, especially not on the mainstream. You don't get as much of them. But,
and I think that's a real shame too, because I think that's something about the old school that I love is the role of a manager.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not just to be there. I think there's misconceptions about it. I think some people think if you have a manager, it means you can't talk. You're incapable of getting yourself across, so you need a mouthpiece. That's not true. It's just that having a manager it completes the package. The Midnight Express would not be as well remembered as they are today without Jim Cornette. And The Undertaker wouldn't have had such a great start in his career without Paul Bearer. Shawn Michaels early on in his after post-Rockers career without Sensational Sherry. Managers and valets add so much to a match, and especially to a team like me and Jordan. So having Lana with us really we call it the total package for a reason. It really brings everything together, and especially in a place like Chaos where they need a wake-up call every once in a while from guys like us coming there and showing what hard-nosed is.
Absolutely, hard work as well.
On
your point there, you made a good point about managers not necessarily meaning that you need a mouthpiece in that, but you look at Sherry. I was going to bring her up as a good example. Yeah, she really helped Shawn Michaels launch his solo run. But then when you look at just before that, when she was paired with Ted DiBiase and Randy Savage, they're guys who they can talk. They're capable.
Exactly.
She added something to them that they didn't have before. And it's an interesting dynamic, I think, when you've got a male and a female in in a unit like that. I think it works better.
100%. Nobody is going to say that Macho Man Randy Savage can't talk.
No.
So the argument that Sherry was there with him because he couldn't cut his own promo, she had to do it for him, is totally wrong. That's just wrong, full
Yeah.
stop. But she was there because she was such a great add-on for the package of the Macho King, and it
Yeah.
made him so much more hateable at the
Yeah.
time that he had this woman there alongside him who was screaming and sneering at children on the side of the ring and pushing over Miss Elizabeth and breaking hearts. You know, that's what made it that much greater, and that's what made that eventually when Randy Savage sees sense and goes back to Elizabeth, it makes it even more sweet because he pushes Sherry out of the way to get there.
Yeah, and I mean, she held her own with guys like that as well.
Yeah,
You know, which is a real testament. And then I think when she did turn, you know, she turned good once she came back after, you know, Shawn Michaels pelted her with a mirror and whatever. But she
oh
held
yeah,
that. It was almost like, what can she do then? They put her with Luna.
yeah,
I was like, okay, you've got someone else who's even more like psychotic almost than Sherry was. It's just,
oh yeah.
yeah. I think it is a lost star, and so well done for
It
bringing
is.
it back.
I'm really glad that the WWE are using Paul Heyman in the spot he's in to really showcase what that role can be and how important it can be. He doesn't get physical ever. You know,
No,
Paul Heyman's not out there getting bumped around and taking punches or doing anything. He
no,
doesn't need to. He's just there to add to the package and add to
yeah.
the drama and make it all around a better show.
And he's done both, in my opinion, because he's been with guys who probably couldn't talk, like Brock. I don't think the early Brock Lesnar couldn't really hold
Just the
a
voice doesn't
conversation.
match the man. That's all his problem is.
No, quite. But then when you've got Heyman with CM Punk, there is no better talk. Now that Jake Roberts is no longer on the scene like he was
Yep,
back in the day, there is no better talker for me than CM Punk.
I would
And
agree.
I think, you know, Punk and Heyman would. That's just magic, isn't it?
Perfect. Absolutely
Yeah.
perfect.
Anyway, to wrap up, because unfortunately I do need to wrap it up. Again, I know you could talk for ages. I could sit and talk
I
to you.
was going to say, you sure I got another hour or two in the air? What?
We've got, you know, we could do, even if we just got back together at some point and just talked old school. I think that would be amazing.
Please, let's do a territory retrospective one day. I think that would be great.
You're on. I'll hold you to
Perfect.
that. That would be amazing. There is one question that I always loved back when I first started this. I always loved asking my guests, and I even asked this of the guys. You know, I've spoken to guys who used to do like WWE and whatever back in the day, and I've even asked them.
Yeah.
You could have your own WrestleMania moment, so a match at WrestleMania with anyone. Doesn't have to be anyone who you've been in the ring with, or you can be in the ring with. It could be past, present, future. Who would you want to have that one WrestleMania match with, and what would that look like?
That's a great question. I wish I had notes. It would be a tag team match because I love tag team wrestling. It's my favorite thing. As much as I enjoy being a singles wrestler, and I will do it, and I will do it happily, nothing brings me more joy than doing tag team wrestling. I think it's such a unique thing, and when it's done right, it's the best thing in the world. And I would love to be able to showcase it somewhere like WrestleMania. So it would have to be a tag team match. And man, going down through history of the greatest tag teams ever to do it, I think it would have to be for a championship, whatever era we're in, WWE World Tag Team titles, against the Midnight Express, managed by Jim Cornette. That would be the match, I think. Yeah, I can't think of anything that would top that. Just the in-ring action and everything that comes with Cornette on the outside would just be the most entertaining thing possible. So I would absolutely love to do that match.
I would definitely pay to see that. Which iteration of Midnight Express?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I was thinking about it in my head. Oh, because I love both. I love Dennis Condrey. I think he's such a great wrestler, but also he's got that face, you know, that real gruff, miserable man face. But Stan Lane is the antithesis, where he's Jordan to me. You know, he's a good looking guy. He knows he's a good looking guy. He's in shape and he knows it. I would probably say Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane, just because I think by that point later on in their career, they'd really got the total package together and everything synced up right with Cornette as well. So I think slightly later era Midnight Express with Stan Lane would be the one to go with.
Like it. Love it. I didn't know if you were going to pick the Heavenly Bodies there. That would have been an interesting one.
It's tough. It's very tough. It's very tough. And again, then it's what iteration of the Heavenly Bodies do you want? Do you want Stan again, or do you want Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey? These are all questions.
They are, aren't they? With Stan Lane, you know, again, quite an underrated guy. My first exposure to Stan Lane, sadly, was when he was one of the broadcasters in WWE in like '94.
Yeah,
so I knew his voice. He's got one of those voices. It was like the voice of my childhood almost. Like,
yeah.
You know, Sean Mooney, Todd Pettengill, and that. So when I went back and I was watching old WCW, like 1990 WCW, and he's there in the ring, I was like, that didn't look right. He's got tights on. He's not got.
I know, but like they're so underrated as a tag team wrestler, not just in the Heavenly Bodies, not just in the Midnight Express, but also in the Fabulous Ones with Steve Karen. Yeah. He's one of the best tag team wrestlers throughout history, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that.
I don't.
And I think that's why I pick him as well, just to give him his due at WrestleMania.
There you go. There you go. You've gone above and beyond in justifying that pick. Well,
that's for you, Stan.
Toby, this has been fantastic, mate. We will definitely do this again.
Please.
Because I think, you know, we definitely tap into some good stuff between ourselves. So
let me know. I'll bring notes. I'll bring books. I swear. We'll do it all.
Sounds good. You'll probably show me up because I do very, very little in the way of research as I should do. There we go. Listen, mate, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, just sort of, you know, the floor is yours. So sell yourself as if you haven't already done it for an hour. You know, where can people find you, follow you? Appearances coming up. This episode goes out on Friday this week. So if you've got anything from this weekend beyond that you can tell us about, over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, the Blockbusters are going everywhere we can, as much as we can. This weekend, unfortunately, we're not together. I'm doing my own thing in Wales with Welsh Wrestling on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So anybody in Wales might catch me this weekend. But the following weekend, we'll be back at Brick King Wrestling on the 22nd, defending our NWA JCP World Tag Team Championships again. And the day before, on March 21st, is our first match back at New Wave Wrestling, where we're going to be taking on Connor Mills and Nico Angelo, Diamond Eyes. And that's the first time that we will have been in the ring with either of those guys. So that's going to be an interesting one for our first one back at New Wave. But in terms of our championships that we hold so proudly, the next event for Southwest Wrestling that we're going to be at is on April 20th in the Trinity Centre in Bristol. No idea on an opponent yet, but we'll bring Lady Luck with us, so it's worth going anyway. Slam Masters Tag Team Championships, their next show is, I believe it's June 8th, which is a Sunday, back in the Banking Hall in Cardiff. So again, we'll be defending the belts there. UPW Tag Team Championships, they've got an unknown date in August later this year, so a little ways to go until UPW's back. But their shows are always great, so we look forward to that. And we're defending the JCP belts at more or less every week, as often as we can, because, you know, we got to show them that we earned them and we're going to keep them for a very long time.
Fighting champions again.
Absolutely.
You know, hark back to the good old days that you were a fighting champion. You didn't sit on the championship for months without defending it.
Touring around, taking on all challengers. That's the deal.
Marvelous. Toby, brilliant. Until next time, mate. Thank you so much. All the best with everything. I'm keeping a very, very keen, close eye on what you guys are doing. And
thank you very much.
We'll be very, you know, soon. Hopefully, I'll be able to, you know, be there again in person to sway the crowd your side. Hopefully, we'll see.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. Tell them the truth, Chris.
Absolutely, mate. Take it easy, bud. Thanks again.
You as well. Thanks, Chris.
Good.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, share, and hit the subscribe button. Also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Once Upon a Turnbuckle to keep updated about all future shows.